So welcome back. Now we're going to do scatter plots and best fit lines via the calculator. And we're also going to talk about the correlation and correlation coefficients of linear functions. So steps 1 through 4, these are the directions if you have a TI 83 or 83 plus. I'll bring out my 84 here in just a second, start showing you how to do this. But first I want to talk about the correlation. Correlation coefficient is the R value that the calculator is going to provide for you. In linear functions, they'll give you the R. All other functions that we do, it will be listed as an R squared. Now, the reason the calculator will find the actual R value for you is because of this concept of the slope. Remember how we said that in a linear function, whether you're increasing, decreasing, or constant was going to be based on your slope value. So this R value is going to be from -1 to +1. I shouldn't say a slope value. This correlation value, coefficient value, will be from -1 to a +1. The closer you are to -1 or to +1 will determine how strong of a correlation you are. The closer you are, the stronger it is. The closer you get to 0, the weaker your correlation. So if I had a data set that had a bunch of points looking like they're going uphill, this would be a positive correlation. My best fit line is going to have a positive slope. So positive correlation means you're going to have a positive slope. The value of the slope doesn't determine the value of the positive correlation coefficient. So I could have a very high or strong correlation. So I could have like 0.99, but I could have a positive slope of maybe 1/10. No correlation between the slope and the correlation coefficient. In our last example that we did, we're going to do it again on the calculator, we definitely had a negative correlation. We had a best fit line. We noticed we had a negative slope. It was what I think we had it as -1/10. And if you have no correlation, that would be kind of like your points are scattered all throughout the graph. And it looks like it makes a giant circle of points. There's no true meaning in which way the direction of the points are flowing. All right, so that would be that's when your correlation R value is going to get closer and closer to 0. All right, now to have your calculator find this correlation coefficient. On the old 83s, this is in step 3. You have to get your diagnostic turned on. It's a little difficult to get to. It's an extra button pushing. And again, if you have one, if you have questions, I'm more than happy to help you with it via a video chat. But for the 84, all you have to do is go to the mode button. Hit the mode button, and you'll get a list of all the different types of functions and commands you can have in here. And you scroll down to where it says Stat Diagnostics, and you just want to highlight the on, put your cursor on, and make sure it has this black border around it. Then it's turned on. And once you have it on, it stays on until you want to turn it off. All right? Okay, so I'm going to stop my PowerPoint and go get my calculator here. And we are going to go enter the points from our last example. We're going to do that problem again, but we're going to do everything via the calculator. It's going to find everything for us. It looks like I still have one of our old problems here on my screen. So I'm going to definitely go to y equals and get rid of that. We don't want that there. Okay, so I'm going to start at the home screen. Again, as I mentioned, well, let's clear this out too. So in case you get behind on button pushings, you know where I'm at. Okay, so as I said, I'm going to check my calculator mode, diagnostics on. So all you have to do is, let's say if I go down here and I want to turn it off, you put your cursor on off, you hit enter, it's now highlighted so you don't have the diagnostics on. If you have it highlighted off, put your cursor on, hit enter, and we're good to go. Second mode, back to the home screen. All right, so what we want to do now is we want to enter those data points. So again, we're looking at that X and Y table, and we want to plug in all those numbers. So you're going to press the stat button right here. And it's already choosing edit. This is where we're going to edit our data. So go ahead and hit enter. And here's my data values. You can see I still have some information left here. Your calculator may have something left in L1 and L2. So what I want to do is I want to go over to L1. There's two ways to get rid of the data. The fastest way is to put your cursor up on L1 and clear out the data. That's the fastest way, and then hit enter. Everything's gone. The other way to get rid of your data is just to type numbers over it. And then when you don't want it, let's say we get down to the bottom and we don't need that number, you just hit delete and you're good. And then enter. Okay, so those are the two ways. So I'm going to clear out L2 so I start from scratch. It's always the clear button. So go over to L1. In that X column that we had, we're going to put in those hours of video games per week. So if you're looking at your note sheet, we're going to start typing in our numbers. 0, enter. 0, enter. We're going to type in all the X's and don't miss any numbers. If you miss numbers, then your data is not going to be matched up properly. All right, so let's see. I'm trying to do this as fast as I can. You guys are probably beating me. All right, so there is L1, L2. Now we've got to put in all those decimals there. If you're using a desktop emulator and on your keyboard you have the number pad, you can use your number pad. So you're going to notice I'm not going to move my cursor here. And you can type in the numbers. So example 3.49. Enter. I'm just using my keypad to help punch these numbers in faster. 3.05, 3.24, 2.82, 3.19. And always double check that you're typing the numbers in correctly. Whoops, there we go, I made a mistake. 3.78, not 79, so left arrow back, make it an 8. There we go. 2.31. And another good suggestion to do is like when you get halfway through your data, when I was at that 5, make sure the 5 matches up with 2.78 so I didn't miss anything. Because if you miss something early, you got to go back and retype everything in. So you're always checking to make sure I'm matching. Oh, no, I got 2 8s here. Be careful. I need the 2.54. Not the 231. I don't need that typed in twice. And at the end, you want to make sure every number corresponds, like X corresponds to Y. Just as we did with our functions. All right, so that's done. We got that all taken care of. All right, so we're going to quit. Get out of the screen. So second mode takes you back to the home screen. All right, so the next thing we want to do is actually calculate what we call a linear regression. Now again, this is going to be on the test. You're going to have to do this with the calculator, so you want to make sure you have a calculator. Now, real quick talking about the test, if you prefer to test at the Math Solution, they have calculators there for you, and they have the 84 CEs that you can use in the testing room there. Okay, so now we're going to go to Stat again, and this time we're going to do a calculation. And this is all the types of things that you can work with your data. Well, we want to do a linear regression. And again, I don't know why there's 2 linear regressions listed here. I'm totally confused. I don't know why. But we're going to use the one number 4 because this is in that form, if you will, mx plus b. So a is going to be your slope, b will be your y-intercept. So we're going to either scroll down to 4 or just type the number 4, and it activates a new window. Now, it should have your X list should be L1 and your Y list should be L2. If those are not there, you need to delete them. So let's pretend these are not L1 and L2. I would just hit the delete button. Now, L1 is right above the button 1. There's L1. You can see it right there. And above 2 is L2. So they kind of matched them up with the number. So if I just hit second, number 1, it will put L1 there for me. All right, next, what I want to do is I want to go to store my regression. I want to actually see the graph of my regression line. We're not going to worry about that frequency list. We're just going to do store regression. So I want to store that in Y1. So on the TI-84 Plus Silver Editions, the CE, there is a shortcut. If you hit alpha, trace, it gives you the list of all the places to store your equations. It's basically the Y equal button here. All right, so I'm just going to hit enter for the 1, and it's going to store it in Y1 for me. Then we're going to down arrow. We're going to calculate out our linear regression. There it is. Now, having our diagnostics on gives us this R squared and R. So normally your correlation coefficient is given as an R squared. And if you want to find that value, you take the square root of this decimal, and you'll get this decimal right here, but it would be a positive value. So because linear regressions can have a negative correlation, they give both the R and the R squared. That's the only regression that does that. So here we are at negative 0.868. So that's somewhat of a strong negative correlation. And we have our slope, negative 0.94. So remember, when we did this by hand, we had negative 0.1. So we were pretty close with those 2 points. And if I remember right, our y-intercept was 3.43. Here the calculator said 3.276. So again, we're relatively close to what we did by hand. Now, if you go to y equals, all those decimals up here for A and for B, they're all plugged in right here. And there's a lot of decimals there. They put them all in for us. So now we want to see and actually make the graph via our calculator. Okay, so what we have to do here is notice on the top there's a plot 1, 2, and 3. These are not highlighted, so they're not turned on. All right, so if I want to turn on my plots, right above the y equals is stat plot. So if I hit second, y equals, here's my plots 1, 2, and 3. And again, they're all turned off. I'm going to turn plot 1 on. So I'm going to right arrow over. Let's see, let's hit enter first. There we go. Enter to get into the plot 1 window. Hit enter for on. And here's the types of graphs you can make with your data. You can make a scatter plot. It's already highlighted. Excuse me. You can make a line graph where they connect everything together. You can make a histogram, box and whiskers. We're going to stay right here. X list, Y list, L1, L2 already there. And you can choose what kind of markings. You can have big squares. You can have plot your points as a plus sign, smaller, even smaller. Smaller is good as if you have a lot of points that you have to plot. You can also change the color. Blue, red, black, magenta, green, orange, all kinds of colors. So I'm going to stick with, where is it? My gosh, look at all these colors. We're going to stay with blue. Everything's good. All good. So now if I go back to y equals, now you can see plot 1 has been highlighted. So it's going to plot my scatter plot. The next thing I have to do is go back and look at the graph we made. All right. We have to make our window match the graph. So we want to have, now this is where I want to show you the difference in the graph because of that little squiggly line down there but near the origin. I'm going to leave my x-min 0, and if I recall, I think we counted up to, what, 25, so a max of 25. And we counted by ones. Y-min is going to be 0. I'm not going to skip any graph. And then I'm going to put 4.0, or just 4 for my Y-max. And I'm going to have my tick marks count by 0.1 so it matches on my graph. And once you set your window, you can make your graph. So here's my scatter plot points. And again, remember, those are the 2 points that we chose, and look how close that best fit line comes to those 2 points. And again, 1, 2, 3, 4 above, 1, 2, 3, 4 above. What's different in this graph compared to what you have on the paper is the paper had the line going downhill much faster. Okay, there was a reason for that. We cut off the bottom half of the page. If you look at the graph you made, if you extended your line, it actually crossed the x-axis somewhere down here. And it doesn't cross the x-axis. So that's why if you put those little squiggly lines or you see graphs with those squigglies, you can't make any comparison when you cut out that bottom half of the graph. Now, the next thing you might be asked to do with this best fit line would be to make predictions. Now, our data only went up to 12 hours playing games, okay? So if they said, well, what would be your GPA if you were playing 16 hours of game time? Okay, so that means we're going to put our cursor on the best fit line. So I'm going to hit trace. Now, by default, plot 1's going to show up first because it was above on the top. So I don't want to hit the points because when I trace through the points, all I will do is just hit the points in the order in which they were plotted. All right, what I want to do is I want to hit the down arrow, and now that takes me to Y1. Now I am on my best fit line. So if I wanted to find what would be my estimated GPA if I had 16 hours of gaming, I'm just going to type in 16. Once I have my Y1 up here on the top, I hit enter, my GPA is going to be around 1.77. Or we could do 20 hours. My GPA is 1.39. And because my correlation coefficient was that negative, what we had, I think it was 0.89, something like that. We said it's pretty strong. That's like saying that's a confidence of like, my guesses are going to be about 89% efficient and correct. They're going to be pretty darn close. Okay? So this is how we build our scatter plot and our best fit line, which is called a linear regression. And again, going back to the home screen. Oops, I lost my regression. So if you want it back, if you want to go back, hit second, enter, and you can retrieve old commands. Hit enter again, and it gives that data back. Oh, it was 0.868. So about 86.8% accurate for that best fit line.